Como dice Marie Curie, en la vida no existe nada que temer, solo cosas que comprender. Recuerden, Cory, buscar la manera de aprender que más le divierta. Neil deGrasse Tyson dice: nadie que es curioso es tonto. Las personas que no hacen preguntas permanecen ignorantes el resto de su vida. Y para ustedes, esto es curiosidad científica.
Buenas, Cory de Curiosidad Científica. Welcome everybody to Scientific Curiosity. Today we're speaking in English because we have a special guest, a pretty special guest. Today we have the honor of speaking with a fantastic scientist, communicator, and author whose work brings the microbiology topics of the world and living organisms to the regular people like me and you. Our guest today is Kelly Weinersmith, an American biologist, parasitologist, and adjunct faculty member in the Department of BioSciences at Rice University. And she also is an author. That's a big thing that we're going to talk about in here because she have a author with, I believe, a husband, a city on Mars. So you kind of can guess what we're going to talk about, like what it is living on another planet on Mars. Another book too is Soonish. I hope I'm pronouncing that the right way.
Yep.
So these books will examine like the ecological and biological challenges of living on Mars and other celestial bodies. And please, everybody, just welcome the great and wonderful Kelly Weinersmith. How are you, Kelly?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and thank you for being willing to do it in English. I'm sorry that I am so bad at other languages, including Spanish.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I have people that have their parents are Puerto Ricans and still they don't speak Spanish. So like Neil deGrasse Tyson was here and he didn't speak Spanish, and he have no excuse because his mom was Puerto Rican. So you're good.
All right, I'm feeling a little better about it now.
Right. Okay. For those that doesn't know you, I don't know where they live, but there's one of my favorite podcasts where sometimes when I don't understand things, I go to the Daniel and Kelly Explain the Universe podcast. It's a wonderful podcast where you guys explain everything like normal people like me and try to bring the universe back to Earth, if I can say, and the parasites, the small things, from parasites to particles, to the regular people like you and me. How is it that you're now being a massive, thousands of days a week or a month, probably hundreds of thousands of people? How do you feel about it? Like you're doing this?
I'm having so much fun. So, as you know, my co-host is a particle physicist, and I don't know anything about physics. And I think part of what works so well with our dynamic is that he doesn't know anything about parasites really, and I don't know anything about physics. And so it's new to us when we describe it to each other. And so we can ask each other questions like we're, amateurs, because we are in each other's fields. And so, every time I get on the show and he's leading the show that day, I know I'm going to learn something new and I have a ton of fun. And Daniel is so patient and so kind and understanding. And I have asked that man the same question probably 1,000 times. And every time he's very patient. And so I'm loving it. I'm having a really good time. We have a lot of fun doing it.
How do you feel about people? Like people approach you in the streets or something, or still?
No, nobody approaches me in the
Pretty
streets.
big.
We're not that big.
I know. I did it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that you think that we're that big, but no one's approaching us in the street, and we don't do video. So, Daniel and I like to joke that we have faces for radio. So we don't let people see our faces. Yeah.
One thing that you guys are great, actually really, really great, is that you guys make a lot of jokes about it. And now you have kind of introduced kind of like a poultry and rhymes when you're trying to do the intro about what you guys talking. And I'm
it's so bad.
Do you guys really plan that or because no? It's actually pretty fun and pretty good. You
Oh,
actually
good.
kind of bring that, at least for me, it's really funny. Like, oh wow, did they plan that? How much time it take you to write that kind of like poem or whatever? I didn't.
It should take me longer. I should probably spend like, try to make it better. But I was at this event in Kentucky, and a woman who was a poet was invited because they were trying to get a lot of different disciplines together. And so they explicitly invited a poet. And she like wrote a poem about a city on Mars, and she was trying to encourage people to like just write poems, just express yourself through poetry and don't be insecure about it. Just do it for fun and enjoy yourself. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. And we were trying to figure out how to open our listener question episodes. And I was like, I'm gonna try a poem. And Daniel's like, yeah, okay, we'll try a poem. And so
He will say yes to everything. He's the most whatever.
yeah,
Really nice about.
he's great. Yeah, no, he rolls with it. He's like, let's do it. And so I don't know, I'm having fun with it. My husband he's a literature major, and poems that don't have like the right meter or whatever really upset
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
And so he can't listen to the beginning of those episodes. He fast forwards through our poem because he's like, I don't think I could handle this. And so but to each their own.
That's so funny. Everybody should go and look for Daniel and Kelly Explains the Universe. It's wonderful. So also
Thank
your
you.
books that we were gonna talk a little bit later. But let's start with the beginning. Can you tell us about why you became a biologist and what led you to specialize in parasitology? I believe it cannot be the fish because fish doesn't enjoy you to.
Uh, so I guess that's fair. I didn't originally want to study fish. I don't usually tell this part of the story, but you're calling me out. So usually, or initially, I applied to all the labs that did like lions and giraffes and all the like, charismatic fauna that you see in Africa. And I didn't get into any of those labs because like everybody applies to those labs and I didn't stand out. But I did get into the fish labs. And so, but I kind of fell in love with fish. They're
Yeah.
easier to study and they have like very diverse behaviors. And over time, I became a person who was kind of more interested in questions than the organism. And fish, it's very easy to ask, evolutionary and ecological questions because they're so diverse and they're everywhere. But then I did fall in love with their parasites, which is a weird, like if you told 14-year-old Kelly, one day you're going to really think parasites are fascinating, I'd be like, oh, 14-year-old
Uh,
Kelly's a real weirdo. Or sorry, adult Kelly is a real weirdo. But I guess adult Kelly is a real weirdo, but that's all right. I'm okay with that. But yeah, so I originally wanted to study the behavior of like big, beautiful cats and stuff. And then I ended up
mhm.
studying the behavior of fish, and I really loved fish. And then I read Carl Zimmer's book Parasite Rex, and that book is about like the amazing things that parasites do. So the one thing that really stood out to me was there's this parasite that is able to essentially like pull proteins off of human cells and stick it on itself as a way to
Oh
like hide
wow.
from our immune system. And so it's wearing like a human coat so our immune system
Yeah.
can't find it. Yeah, and I just thought like, okay, you know what? I always thought of parasites as just these like simple but horrible things, but they're much more complicated than I thought, and that makes them
Uh-huh.
much more interesting. And at that moment I was like I just started seeing parasites differently. They weren't just like I know, simple and awful. They were, complicated and creepy, but also kind of fascinating. And that sort of opened the door. And a couple years later, when I went to grad school, and my advisor was like, hey, have you heard about this parasite that infects cats and makes them, or sorry, that infects cats and infects rats? And then it makes the rats attracted to the smell of cat urine. And I was like, oh,
I
that's
hear that.
interesting. Yeah. And so then, as a person who studies animal behavior, I was like, oh, I want to know how parasites change animal behavior. And that became the thing that motivated me through grad school. And still motivates me quite a bit today. So that was my path through grad school. And I ended up studying parasites that live on the brains of fish instead of parasites that live on the brains of rats, partly because the parasites that live on the brains of rats can infect people too. And I have a strong self-preservation streak, and I did not want to get infected with that parasite accidentally. And I'm very clumsy. I thought there was a high probability I would accidentally infect myself with that parasite. So I stuck with fish. And I'm happy to tell you more about any of those parasites if you'd like.
Of course, for sure I want to. And that's the crazy thing about it. Because I did a parasite episodes like a couple episodes ago.
Okay.
So kind of have like introduction to our conversation. So I have a little bit more rasp about it. Of course, so people would probably get into this episode, with a little bit more knowledge. And I noticed like there even parasites, some parasites help with the evolution of humanity, a lot of it. And there is at least what I read about it. And to me, it's kind of impressive because usually when you talk about parasites or kind of infectious thing that will sometimes eat you alive or kill you to survive, and it's kind of like a horror movie, kind of like a alien movie, like he use you, pregnant you, and then kill you at the end. And that was my mindset before I did this episode about parasite. And to me, it's impressive. Like, oh, of course, that's why usually humans and evolution works. Like we try to survive to things that will kill us, so we evolve, and now we're here. And to me, it's kind of mind blowing. But still, biology is so complex. Because even with all your studies, there is some things that you could, and especially when you talk with other scientists, like they could be part of a field, and still, when you ask them, like especially, I know a lot about astrophysics, so sometimes astrophysics or astral astronomy scientists, they don't know a lot about maybe particle physics or give or take. So it's kind of huge, like the field that you are in. So still, to me, why did you study biology at all? Because it was just like in graduate school you were excited about it, or you were always like that kid that always tried to like pick up some, I don't know, like bugs in the backyard or something, because it is a hard field, like chemistry. I think like biology and chemistry, I read these books and papers, and I'm like, most of the time I don't know exactly what they're trying to say. And I read physics papers that I do understand, and I don't understand these papers sometimes, especially chemistry and biology. Even if you know a little bit about certain specimen, you probably don't know anything about some other creature. How do you work with that?
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, so when I was a kid, I definitely I'm sorry. I was the kid who was jumping into the pond to try to catch the frog, and then was chasing after the snake, and then was collecting all the salamanders and trying to create like a little habitat for the salamanders in my backyard. And so I was into like the animals when I was a kid. And then when I got a little bit older, I was obsessed with ER, the TV show ER. And so I thought,
okay.
yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to be an ER surgeon for sure. And then when I got older, I realized, if I'm an ER surgeon, one day I'm going to have to tell somebody that their kid passed away. And I decided, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to do that. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that. You know what? I'm going to work with people's pets instead. I'm going to be a vet. And then I saw the way a family member responded when they were told that their dog needed to be put down. And I was like, I don't want to do that either. They responded the same way.
Bad news after bad news. What is this feel about?
Yeah, I was like, I just don't want to give bad news to people. Maybe that's which is funny because I've sort of ended up being a wet blanket delivering bad news to people has sort of been my thing in my books. But anyway, but yeah, so I was like, well, what am I gonna do? And then one day I took an ecology class. And the ecology class, like, I thought this was going to be my easy A. It was going to be like hippies running around in the woods, collecting frogs, and it was just going to be like super easy. But instead, the professor was like using differential equations to describe the dynamics of like, predators and prey. And I really liked math. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a hard science where they're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future. And they're trying to conserve animals by like really understanding what it is that they need and how they fit into their ecosystems. And this this is going outside, but it's also really rigorous. And I got just really excited about, I don't know, the combination of being able to go outside while also doing hard math and all of that stuff. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to be an ecologist. And then I got really into animal behavior as like a subset of ecology. And then I got really into parasites as like trying to understand what's happening with the animals and their behavior because of parasites. And so that's sort of the tortuous path that I took to get to how parasites impact behavior.
You did were somebody that was interested in animal or human behavior too. So that's kind of fun too. But let's talk about what matters here. Parasites.
That's right.
Can you explain about, like what is a parasite? Because people can get confused between like viruses or bacteria, things like that. What is a parasite exactly? And I'm not talking about my cousin in my uncle's house.
Right. Well, so scientists don't do any favors because we use some of these words like interchangeably. So a lot of times when someone says parasite, they also are willing to include like viruses and bacteria and stuff like that. They just mean like anything that infects another thing. But like technically when someone says a parasite and they're a scientist, what they usually mean is like a multicellular organism, like a tapeworm or a trematode. So that would be a kind of parasite that causes like schistosomiasis. This is a disease that's a problem in places like Africa and Asia. And when they say a pathogen, then they mean things like viruses and bacteria. And so that's usually how we divide it up. But when these words get used when having discussions with the general public, sometimes they have different meanings, and often parasite is used for like anything that infects you and you'd rather not have it around.
Okay, yeah, because there is some different types of parasites too. So there's the ones that just feed out of like the host, and there's some that will kill the host. So especially in your field, that's what you study. Can you tell us about a little bit about that?
Sure, and there's a couple different ways to kill the host. Yeah, and one of the things that's frustrating about about parasitologists, which are people who study parasites, is we'll go to conferences and we will fight with each other about the best way to define these things. And so no one should ever feel bad if they're like, I don't remember all the definitions. We're changing them all the time. It doesn't matter. So parasitoids are a kind of parasite that kills its host to complete its life cycle. And so they usually kill their host because they're eating the inside of the host at the end of some stage of their life cycle, and they're consuming the host body before they move on. And then there's another kind of parasite that we call trophically transmitted. And all that really means is that there's different levels in like food webs that you might have learned about like in elementary school, for example. And as you move from one level to another, we say you're, moving up trophic levels. And essentially the parasite needs its current host, which is in one part of the food web, to get eaten by a predator that's one level up in the food web. And so, for example, maybe you're a parasite living in a fish and you need a bird to eat it. And then you can go on and live inside the bird's stomach or something like that. And so those are trophically transmitted parasites. They need their current host to get eaten, by the next host.
Crazy. Do they do anything to that fish, like to be dumb enough, like maybe like swim closer to almost out of the water or something?
They do.
Some parasite have
They do. It depends on which one you're talking about. But so there's a tapeworm called Schistocephalus solidus, and it gets gigantic. And sometimes the fish can be carrying multiple of these parasites, but they get really big. And so the fish almost look like they're like massively pregnant because their bellies get huge, and they end up hanging up near the water surface. We don't totally understand why. Maybe they just feel like they need more oxygen because they've got like all of this extra mass that they need to take care of.
Or something.
Something. But they're easier to catch by birds because they're just kind of like, like when I was 9 months pregnant in my third trimester, I was probably very easy to catch as well. Like, and they look like they're just super pregnant and just like they can't get away. And then they're hanging out near the water, the top of the water. So they're easy to catch. And then they live in the bird. And so that's helpful for the bird. And then I studied another kind of parasite called a trematode. And they form these tiny little cysts on the brains of fish that you find in Southern California and Baja California. And these fish can have like the fish are called California killifish. They're these gray fish that are like maybe as big as like the bottom of your palm to the tip of your middle finger. That would be a really big one. They're usually a little bit
That's
smaller than
big.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're usually a little bigger, smaller than that. But like they're like this kind of dull gray color most of the year, but they can have on their brains like up to 1,000. And one time my colleague found as many as 8,000 of these parasites on their brain. These little cysts. They look like little kind of mostly clear balls sitting on top of their brain. And the fish mostly seem normal, like they're not
Oh,
swimming
wow.
on their sides. They don't have these giant bellies like that other parasite that I was talking about. They like
Uh-huh.
act normal, like they swim in groups, they feed, but every once in a while, they will shoot forward really quickly. And fish do this often, like they'll shoot forward
Uh-huh.
really quickly,
Sometimes
but
they do. Yeah.
yeah, but usually they're like shooting forward to go hide behind a plant or something if you've scared them or they think there's a predator around. And so they're shooting forward so that then they can hide. But these fish, like they shoot forward like they're afraid of something, and then it's like they've forgotten what they're afraid of. So they shoot forward and then they're
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh, wait, what was I thinking? I'm fine. And then they just kind of like move around like nothing. And so they
Normal.
draw totally normal. So they draw your attention and like I'm not a bird, but I'm imagining that a bird kind of sees the world similar to how I do. Like this fish moving forward kind of draws my attention at least. And then it just is kind of slowly moving around and you're still looking at it. And so it's easy to like your attention has been drawn to a particular individual and now they're not hiding. And so presumably that gets the fish eaten. So we think that these extra darting behaviors, which we know that fish that are infected by more of these parasites, they do these darts more often. And so we think that is making the fish get eaten by predatory birds more often. So it does look like the parasites are manipulating their hosts to get them eaten
Yeah.
by birds.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. It's really impressive. I didn't know that it was so many
It's
of these parasites. Because, it's kind of famous now because of the TV series or game or
hmm
whatever about the cordyceps. And everybody
hmm
talks about because not just like parasites that are kind of like, well, I believe like fungus are most closer to like humans or whatever than plants, I believe. But I mean, like usually you think about a parasite and you think about like another organism, like normal organism that is not a plant or kind of a plant. But
hmm
like in specifically, there is even like parasites like this fish that I never remember the name, but it's like they have like a really ugly fish that the partner is like a really really small partner that it just attached to the female and live in there. But
Oh, yeah, keep talking. It'll
I
come to me.
don't I yeah but anyway, to me it's kind of impressive. Like you think about, at least in my part, that I don't know a lot about parasites, and usually everybody's talking about the cordyceps. And yeah, these fungus that get into insects, especially ants and things like that. But then there is more parasite like this that kind of affect the behavior of other animals. I didn't knew that about at all. And wow, to me, it's kind of scary. Like
Yeah.
everything kind of evolves. Like would be a thing that maybe some of these parasites can evolve enough to damage humans or something like that. That
Well,
possible?
okay. So first of all, I think anglerfish is what we were looking for
Yes,
the
yes,
yes.
yes, yes. That's
Would
the
it
one.
could it evolve to like take over humans? So jumping from, ants to humans or jumping from fish to humans, these are really big jumps. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that being able to jump from a really distantly related organism and then control the behavior of a new host is pretty unlikely. But so, I mentioned a while ago that there's that rodent that's infected by a parasite that makes them attracted to the smell of cat urine, which we think gets them eaten by cats. That parasite is also
Mm-hmm.
found in people. And that parasite, have you heard the story of this parasite, Toxoplasma gondii? And
Yes, I have, and I know like people, regular people, start acting kind of wild or something like that, right? If I'm
so
not
it's
wrong.
Yeah, no, so you're right, but like I think a lot of the stories have been a little over exaggerated because it's really hard to
Okay,
study this, right? So
of
if you
course.
wanted to do, let's forget about ethics entirely for a second, which I think we should never do in real life. But if you weren't worried
You're
at all
hanging
about
out with
ethics,
Daniel way too much, I believe. Again,
that's right.
he will sacrifice everybody for physics. So
I mean,
yeah,
if he got to meet aliens, he would kill us all. We'd all be goners if he could meet some aliens. But
I'm sorry to interrupt.
no, it's true. It's and so if you had a bunch of people and you could measure their behavior and then infect them with parasites on purpose and then measure their behavior again later, or if you could like randomly infect some people with parasites and then track all of their behavior over time, then you could probably really say what the parasite is doing to behavior. But what we have right now is you randomly collect a bunch of people and you look at their blood, and if they've been exposed to the parasite, then they will have an indicator in their immune system that their immune system has responded to the parasite. So these things called antibodies. So essentially, you'll be able to say this person's immune system has recognized that they've been infected
Mhm.
by Toxoplasma gondii, but you don't know when they were infected and you don't know how they were infected. And so sometimes people will say, like, oh, this parasite has made people more willing to take risks. But it could be that people who got infected by the parasite were just more willing to take risks, and
Yeah,
that's
they
what got them
already were.
infected. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's what made them more willing to eat meat that was undercooked in an area where the parasite is very common or something like that. And so it's really hard to tease apart what the parasite is doing to someone's behavior after they get infected versus somebody's behavior is what got them infected in the first place. And again, because of ethics, which I care about a lot, we should never do these experiments.
uh,
But like you'll never get the kind of data you really need
yeah.
to know what's driving what. But correlations that we found suggest that people who are infected are slightly more likely to get into car accidents. It's not because they're driving erratically, but it looks like their reaction times are slowed a little. And so,
Mm.
like, when you need to make that split second decision, they're just a little less likely to be able to, like, turn the wheel and get out of the way in time. Maybe they're more likely to become entrepreneurs and start their own companies.
It could be a good thing.
Yeah, maybe,
Could
maybe,
be.
could be. Uh, Men who are infected rate the smell of cat urine to be slightly more pleasing. But women who are infected don't do that. So the crazy cat lady story doesn't quite line up. People always ask me,
Okay.
like, oh, does this explain the crazy lady story? And I was like, no, but it maybe suggests we should be a little bit more like keeping our eyes open for crazy cat men. But
Uh-huh.
which is fine. I'm on board with everybody loving cats. Um,
Uh-huh.
but and then it also like there's if you give a survey for neuroticism and then you look at neuroticism scores for how neurotic people are at the country level, and then you look for correlations for between what percent of people in that country are infected by the parasite and how neurotic they are based on these psychology scores. Countries with more of the parasite tend to be more neurotic. And so there are these interesting correlations, but again, whether neurotic people are more likely to, I don't know, garden in areas where there are feral cats pooping in the garden. And so like one of the ways that you get it is when cats poop, they spread the eggs of the parasite. And so if you have outdoor cats and you garden and a cat has pooped in your garden and then you
Mhm.
don't wash your hands or you put your, finger in your hand after gardening or something, you can get it that way. Or if you eat undercooked cooked meat from an animal that was
Mhm.
infected. So anyway, there's lots of different ways to get it. But yeah, but you asked me, could a parasite take over humans and take over the
Yeah.
world? I don't think it's gonna take over the world, but it can like make us slightly more likely to try to start a business or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like even when this is fiction, but when
Hmm.
you talk about cordyceps, and I mean you like general, not exactly you,
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, they kind of make a good point about and of course this part is fiction, but I mean like usually when things evolve, like in the case of cordyceps, uh, different species or fungus in this case, they will survive under certain circumstances, like especially like temperature. And we as humans have a like 98.3.5 like body temperature, that maybe the cordyceps won't, survive into that. And sometimes they say like, well, with climate change, maybe evolution, they will evolve to support, to survive more warm weather, and maybe that could happen, and etc. That's pretty much like what he kind of asked. So, and we don't know, because life is kind of crazy. When you have a fish that have like 8,000 parasites in their brain, and they just normal, like it's pretty crazy anyway. So I don't know.
I do think we need to worry about, like, as climate change sort of shifts the zone where both hosts and parasites can live, we should expect humans to be coming in contact with new kinds of species, and as we interact with those new species, their parasites might jump over to us. And I don't necessarily know that they're going to be manipulating us, but there's a good chance that they might have a disease that could just, another coronavirus, another COVID-19 sort of situation. And so I can imagine a lot more of COVID-19 sorts of things happening.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I definitely think that is something we should worry about. I think it would take a long time for a parasite to jump to us and then get to a point where it could manipulate our behavior. That might be like generations of sort of tinkering with our brains.
Yeah, so people, so everybody knows the same thing, like with viruses. Like there is millions of viruses out there, and probably we have a few of them right now, but it doesn't affect us the way it will affect, some virus that suddenly, like COVID, affect us. So it's kind of normal. There are viruses, it's not just those that just affect us. But going back to your studies, because one of the reasons I contacted you, it was because in one of the episodes that you guys were answering questions, you talk about, I believe it's a discovery that you actually did, and hopefully I'm pronouncing it well, the Elderus set, like actually so-called keeper wasp. Like I have wasps inside of my house, and I hate them, and they freaking make those kind of like sticks and spots in the walls and whatever. But this kind of wasp is a little bit crazier, and you discovered this. Can you talk about, number one, how do you discover a wasp that is just a parasite and a crazy one? And then if you tell us about research and what you find out.
Sure. Yeah. So this was most of the credit for the discovery needs to go to my friend Scott Egan. He's at Rice University. He studies gall wasps. And so, like, the kind of wasps most of us think of are social wasps, where they live in big nests and they attack you when you mess with them, or even if you just pass by them. And like, most of us dislike them. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who studies social wasps who is like, Kelly, you're giving social wasps a bad name. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to. That they're also fascinating. But anyway, these wasps, these are teeny tiny little wasps. They could like sit on the tip of your pinky, and they wouldn't, they're not able to sting you. They're little, and you don't have anything to worry about. So you can just enjoy them without worrying about your safety. And they lay eggs in various parts of oak trees. And then they manipulate the oak trees into producing these compartments that protect their eggs while they develop. And Scott Egan, which is so cool. And Scott Egan studies these, and he's obsessed with them. Like, and I mean that in a really good way. Like, you've got to be, if you're a scientist, you've got to be obsessed with what you study. And And so he brings little like Ziploc bags with him everywhere he goes. And every time he sees a gall that he's excited about, he like, grabs some leaves or snips off some branches. And he was on vacation with his family, and he saw some galls he hadn't seen before. And he was like, hold on, family, we have to stop right now. Oops, knocked over my water. And he like grabbed a bunch of these stems, and these stems had little swellings on them. And like, it's amazing to me that he could even notice, like, those little stems on an oak tree look a little bit thicker than usual, but he's very observant. And so they were thicker
It's
because
really good.
he's
It's
so
really
good.
good.
He's so good. And so they had the little swellings are compartments called crypts. And here's what happens with the crypts. And it's such a great name, crypts. And so the mom wasp will lay an egg inside of the stem. And the stem of the oak tree will be manipulated into producing this compartment. And inside the compartment, it gets lined with a nutritious tissue. When the egg hatches, it's amazing. When the egg hatches, the baby will eat the nutritious tissue, and then it will go through a couple more stages of development. And when it's ready to emerge as an adult, it will chew a hole through the crypt and then go off to complete the next stage of its life cycle. And so that's what's happening with the wasp who is going to be the host in this story. And so, which is just, it's crazy already, right? Because it's kind of like a parasite on the tree. So, like, the host is sort of a parasite. And so I'm already in love with this system. And so Scott brings these branches back to the lab and he puts them in a cup with a coffee filter on top, secured with a rubber band. And he puts them on his table and then he kind of forgets about them. And one day when I'm at Rice, I go to Scott's table or go down to Scott's office just to talk to him about something. And he's like, "Oh, Kelly, something kind of weird happened." And I was like, "What's the weird thing that happened, Scott?" And and he's like, "Well, I was on vacation and I collected a bunch of galls." And I was like, "That is weird, Scott. Most people just go on vacation." And he's like, "No, that's not the weird thing." And he's like, "The weird thing is that usually when gall wasps emerge, if they get stuck at all, which usually they don't get stuck when they're trying to come out from their, from the crypt or from the gall. When they do get stuck, they get stuck at like the equivalent of their shoulders, like sort of like where their wings start. But usually they don't get stuck at all because they chew a hole that's big enough. But the wasps in these sticks, they're getting these stems, they're getting stuck like with where like their face is. And so like you can see these eyes poking out. And I don't why don't they keep chewing? That's a very weird place to get stuck. Like if you're going to get stuck, like getting stuck at your shoulders makes sense because you try to get through and then you're totally stuck and you can't wiggle back, right? And so like getting stuck there makes sense. But getting stuck at your face, like just keep chewing. That doesn't make any sense. And so we went and we dissected out some of these crypts and we were like, well, why are they getting stuck? And every crypt that we dissected had a parasitoid inside of it. And so a parasitoid, as we talked about, is a kind of parasite that eats its host or that kills its host. And in this case, it had eaten the host. And so all of the little eyeballs that were peeking out at us from the branches were host wasps that had been consumed by parasitoids. And so they were like dead. They were just peeking out at us and they were just husks of their former selves. And so we were like, well, what's going on here? And so we went and we collected a lot, which was, I mean, this was like such a fun discovery story. And so we went out and we collected, we're like, what's going on? And so it was crazy. And so we got a bunch of additional stems and we waited to see so at this point, the parasitoids were just like these juvenile white stages where you couldn't they didn't look like adults. They just kind of looked like white blobby things. And so we couldn't really identify them. And so we let them develop a little bit longer until they emerged on their own. And when they emerged, they chewed holes through the heads of the host. And so they climbed through the host's body, chewed a hole through its head, and then came out through the head. And I was like, that is the coolest thing ever. I was so jealous of the zombie ant people because they had zombie graveyards, they had called them graveyards, and they had all these cool terms. And now I had wasps coming out of the heads of wasps that were stuck in crypts, and I finally had all the cool creepy terms, and I was very excited. But anyway, and so it emerged, and we were we have a new species and so we we looked through all of the insect keys. We tried to see if somebody had seen this thing before and it hadn't been named. And it was which was so cool. And it was iridescent and it had these black shoes, or its feet were black. They weren't actually shoes, but it looked like it was wearing boots.
Yeah.
It was super cool. And so because it came
fashion.
Right, exactly. Super fashionable. And because it had come out of a crypt, we called it the crypt keeper wasp. and it keyed out to a pre-existing genus. So, when you give a species a name, it's in a genus. So like humans, we're in the genus Homo, and then our species is sapiens. So we're Homo sapiens. This keyed out to the genus Euderus, but it didn't have a species name. And so we named it Euderus Set after the Egyptian god Set. It's also sometimes called Seth or I think Seti, depending on the translation. But he had trapped his brother in a crypt and then ripped his brother's body to pieces and scattered them. And so this is a wasp that traps another wasp in a crypt, and then it's a very messy eater, so it rips its body into pieces, and you can find all of the host body parts inside of the crypt. And that was Scott's idea, and I was like, Scott, that is so clever and amazing and very exciting. And so then my job was to try to figure out, why is the parasitoid doing this? And so we designed an experiment to try to figure out how this weird behavior might benefit the parasitoid. And so we had a bunch of different hypotheses we guessed. I'm not going to waste your time with all the things we came up with that were wrong. But the thing that we came up with that ended up
it is a good thing that you mentioned it, because usually people think like things just happen. And no. Like most of science is doing a lot of things to get like one right. And that right one, or we believe it was okay. Yeah, we got it. Then it get tested, and no, it's not right either. So back to the drawing board. So yeah, it's good that you mentioned it anyway.
My science has been 90% like, I'm wrong. And then 10% you figure out, aha, this time. But it's a learning process. But so what we did was we cut very thin little pieces of bark off of other branches, and we put them over the holes where the host heads were like looking through. And so we were testing this idea that like, okay, the parasitoid needs the host wasp to start chewing a hole so that it can get out, because the parasitoid is not good at chewing on its own. So it's like a kind of weak at getting, it's not able to get out of the crypt on its own. So it needs the host to essentially make the escape hatch, and then it kills the host. We don't exactly know how it does things in terms of timing, but maybe it kills the host at just the right second so that the host sort of blocks the hole with its head. And to test that, we said, okay, well, can the parasitoid get through a teeny tiny little bit of bark on its own? If that's all it's got to do. And it turned out it was 3 times more likely to die trapped inside of the crypt if it had to get through even just a little bit of bark. And so it really does look like it needs the host to make the escape hatch. And then all it needs to do is get through the host's like weak little head.
Yeah, the head that is probably more chewable than wood, or
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's why we think it does that.
But it is crazy to think that you have this new wasp that is, kind of a baby, but there is one that is even smaller inside. And already at the, I don't know the timing, if you guys measured that or not, because that could really hurt. But the timing of like, no, grow, and when you grow, I'm growing inside of you, and I will keep you from getting out and just manipulate you and use you before you even are able to escape. What is the timing of biology that is so crazy precise? Like, think about it. Like, we as humans, let's say, like if you're pregnant, it's having and this is gonna sound horrible, like, but it's having like a baby that before he gets out, he have another baby inside, and just before you push it, it will get stuck, and then through his eyes, it will pop up a new baby that they are not supposed to know anything about life, but they know like, no, you're not getting out of here before I get out of here. So it's highly exciting to compare things like that with human behavior, because people don't realize how crazy this is. Like how crazy this is. It's not even like alien thing that it just another creature getting out of somebody's chest. No. This was a new baby that already has something inside, and it's gonna get trapped in there by the thing that is inside of it. It's how I don't know. Maybe we will never know, but how do you know? Because you're a baby inside a baby.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? And what a miserable start to life, like for the host, and like Yeah, and there is a lot of timing stuff that we don't know. Like we've tried since I left. Scott Egan and Corey Evans have like tried various ways to like look inside to see the timing and like what's happening. And so they're working on figuring that stuff out. But yeah, like it's absolutely wild, and that they just sort of know all of this instinctively, that the wasp just
Yeah,
knows like, oh,
exactly.
it's time to kill the host right now. And we don't actually know, like, is the egg laid inside the host's body, or is the egg laid like in the crypt but next to the host? And so maybe it just like
Mm.
lets the host start chewing its own way out like it was gonna leave on its own, and then it just like attacks when the host is at a certain point. But then how does it know that the host is at a certain point? And it would need to be at like
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah. Like, does it wait for a little bit of light to come into the crypt? It is like, oh, there's some light, and there wasn't light before, and that must mean that that my host has started to try to escape, and now I need to stop it. And like, but and then it would need to be at like exactly the right stage of development to be able to like chew through the host and kill it at exactly the right
Yeah.
time. And like, it's incredible. And then how does the mom parasitoid find the egg? Because these swellings in the branch are very subtle. And so like, and we don't know the answer in this system, but in some systems, the parasitoid wasps, like the moms that are laying the egg in the galls, like they can sense vibrations, so they can like
Uh-huh.
feel the host moving inside the gall, and they're like, oh, there's something in there. Or they can like smell. So we think that in some cases the trees are releasing some sense to be like, I'm
Yeah.
infected by something. How about you go kill it for me? And so it's like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the
Uh-huh.
parasites are bad for the trees, so the trees are telling the parasitoids where they are. And it's just amazing interactions happening on this tree that are also complicated and are so tiny you could miss them. Like, this was happening on the campus at Rice University. So we found this also on
Wow.
Rice University, and there's so many evolutionary biologists and like biologists on that campus. This has been happening for a long time. None of us had seen it until
Yeah.
now. There's so much we have left to discover. It's incredible. It gets me
It's
very
really
excited.
incredible. That's really incredible for people that love science like we do. It's kind of crazy. Like, yeah, we have new things happening in our backyard, what that we don't have an idea about it. And it's so complicated too. It's not
Hmm.
like we find this new kind of tree or leaves that maybe needs less sun or something. No, no, no. There's complex life living and killing other life
That's
already that we don't think about it.
yeah.
Yeah, that this part of the interview, I'm already blowing into pieces, but I don't want to finish I will try to put the most questions that I can in the time we have, but I really want to talk like at least because it's kind of like extensive, like the book about living on Mars. Uh,
Hmm.
but because of politics and other things. But I'm more interested in the science of it, especially like we as human biology, how we could live in another planet or Mars or etc. So there is things that people don't know, or sometimes we don't think about because we always think about like the science fiction space. Like, yeah, we don't need gravity. We can put like a spaceship to move, and we will have like gravity that way or etc. But it is way harder to live outside or globe that is protecting us with our electromagnetic field and a lot of things.
Hmm.
So why, number one, why did you decide? I knew you were a biologist and you're probably interested in how a human race would survive somewhere else, but especially um, in a biological sense, what is the main um, detractor for humans to don't go and live to in another planet, and what could be good for us if there's anything at all?
I think there's so many answers that we got to that question when we asked people why they want to go. I think the most honest answer is that a lot of people just think it's awesome. And we felt like that was a totally fine answer as long as people going to Mars didn't harm the people who stayed behind. Uh,
Exactly.
and I think a big part of the book is arguing that going to Mars could harm the people who are left behind, especially if it ends up not left behind. I don't feel like I'd be left behind. You've seen how excited I get about teeny tiny wasps. I'm really happy here, but like, but
diversity, the biology diversity here,
that's
better
right.
than Mars.
Yeah, I'm not
I'm
going
guessing.
to Mars. Yeah. But so, for example, if going to Mars and settling Mars creates like a space race where there's scramble for land and that kicks off even more geopolitical conflict than we're seeing right now, and you end up with some like, nuclear war between China and the US. And I know I'm sounding a little bit like hyperbolic right now, but like, I don't want to see a space race part 2 over over Mars, for example. Like Space Race Part 1, as an American, that turned out pretty well for us. That doesn't necessarily guarantee Space Race Part 2 is going to. And people often will say to me, mutually assured destruction. Haven't you heard of that? No one's going to set off a nuclear bomb because we know that then you destroy them as well. But now instead of just having 2 nuclear powers, we have a lot of nuclear powers. Not all of them are led by leaders who are as stable as one might like. For example, North Korea has nuclear weapons. I'll try to stay as unpolitical as possible. I think we can all agree we'd rather
political.
I'll just stick with, I think we can all agree it would be better if North Korea didn't have nuclear weapons. And additionally, like, there are instances during the last space race, during the last Cold War, when we came close to setting off nuclear weapons because there were mistakes, because there were, the radars were wrong and it indicated that nuclear weapons were coming. And someone made a like split-second decision. You know what? I think this is a mistake. I'm not going to hit the button to send the nukes. Like, I don't think you can just say things have been good so far. They will always be good. And so anyway, I'm a little bit worried about a new scramble for territory in this era where so many nations have nuclear weapons. And so I think it has to be done carefully. And so I think there's some chance that it could harm people back here. And then Daniel Dudney also makes this argument that, going to space often involves the ability to move around great mass. So for example, if you're moving around asteroids to extract resources from them, you might accidentally get too close to our gravity well. And if you get an asteroid pulled down to Earth, the dinosaurs, if they could send us a message, the message might be, that can be bad news, guys. And then, he also argues that terrorists, might want to send asteroids to Earth. That would be particularly catastrophic. And anyway, I think there's things to worry about that we haven't worked through yet. And there's lots of reasons to slow down and think about it carefully. And also, Elon Musk will say things like, we should have 1 million people on the moon in the next 20 to 30 years. We absolutely
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen ever. Maybe thousands, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be millions ever, but.
No, I agree. But I do think if he can start sending people there, I'm very concerned because we don't have anywhere near the amount of science that we need to know that reproduction can happen safely out there. And so I'm really worried that he's going to send a bunch of women out there saying like, we're ready, because he's saying we're ready. And then a bunch of women are going to die, going through labor on Mars, because their muscles aren't going to be strong enough. Their bones aren't going to be strong enough at 40% gravity. Like, we don't know how it's going to turn out because we don't have the data, but there's certainly reason to expect that it could be very bad for the mothers and the fetuses, and that they're not going to have the kind of facilities they need when things do go wrong. And so I'm concerned for lots of reasons. And you can see I have entered wet blanket mode.
Yeah, no, but even like that, this is the guy like Elon, if we talk about him and about that, this is the guy that multiple interviews, he says like, yeah, it's so easy to get an atmosphere in Mars. We just nuke Mars. And dude, you know nothing about physics. You know nothing about gravity and why the main reason why Mars doesn't have a atmosphere is because of the size of it. You cannot just put gases out there and they're just gonna stay there. It is really, really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like the distance, like minimum of 2 years. Like people that goes to Mars, they're not coming back. At least right now, the technology we have, people that go there, you cannot come back. And like people, let's say like there is part of like this Artemis mission that was coming up. part of the reason they choose certain people is because they do a lot of tests in their, emotional, how they react to pressure and emotional input and things like that. And this is something that is going to last 3 to 4 days to go to the moon. Imagine flying in a really, really small environment, 4 people from different backgrounds over 7 months. At the right time, 7 months to get there. But after that, you cannot come back after 2 years and then 7 extra months to get here. It is not, right now, I don't think there is any possibility about that. But especially coming from somebody that, he have monetary interest into this. And of course, but I don't think it's possible at all. But you are the one who wrote a book about it, and I know you have a lot of politics on it, so it is good that you talk about that, and that's why we're here, because I believe it's really important, because I would love to explore more, and I believe like the future of humankind will be like interplanetary race probably, but I don't believe it's gonna happen in at least in my lifetime, and probably in my kids and grandkids' lifetime. Not because we don't want to, it's because we don't have the technology or knowledge or anything. That's part of why we are doing the Artemis mission right now with NASA, is because we want to know exactly how the body, the biology of humans is working in those environments. That it's not just the gravity, that it will affect your muscles and your bones density. It's also like your psychology, and even like the radiation, like even in the planet, because my brother is a pilot, and even he feel like for 2 weeks, and then he had like a week off or something like that because of TI, like the radiation is so bad up there, and we're inside the planet, that we have something that cover us from radiation pretty well, and we exist here, and there's people that live over 100 years in this environment. And still, if you're a pilot and you fly closer to the atmosphere, you work for certain weeks, and then you have to have like off like a week or 2 in a row. So, like, to be safe of radiation inside the planet. Out there is crazy, like really crazy. So I don't know about that either. Do you have any other thoughts about what you guys find in your research while you were writing this book?
We were just amazed at how many things we still have to figure out while we were going. Like, we had while we were researching Soonish, our first book, we had done a bunch of interviews from people who were like, we're ready to start settling space. The only thing that's holding us back is that we can't yet afford to send the habitats to space. But Elon Musk is solving that problem by making these, reusable rockets. He's lowering the cost. So we're going to be able to do it now. And my husband and I were like, we didn't realize we had solved all the other problems. Wow. And
the main problems. The main problems.
That's right. And so we pitched to our editor. We're like, apparently space settlements are coming soon, and we know we've solved all the other problems. And so we said we were going to write a book about how they're coming soon. And then after 4 years of research, our book is about how making rockets to get to Mars is one of many problems. It's a hard problem, but not the hardest probably.
No.
And it's just, one of many, many problems that are very, very important and all need to be taken seriously. And the other problems are mostly not getting funded right now. And so we're really not making progress on those problems. And so, I also don't think it's definitely not happening in my lifetime, probably not my kid's lifetime. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And for people that actually want to know more about it, the book, so we don't give a lot of spoilers here, is A City on Mars. And in there you explore the ecological challenges of establishing human settlement there on Mars. So what are the biggest biological obstacles to live on a planet like Mars?
Oh man, where to start? So human health is Jeez. Yeah, so you, as you mentioned, you have to worry about the radiation, because we're on Earth, we're protected by Earth's magnetosphere and a thick atmosphere, so space radiation doesn't reach us, and most of the astronauts who have been to space, except for the ones who made it to the moon, are still mostly protected by Earth's giant magnetosphere. So we don't really have any data on how space radiation impacts human bodies.
That's true.
And so we're just like, I read one paper that said, essentially, we don't know if space radiation causes cancer, but it's reasonable to assume that it can. That's where we are right now. That's where we are. Like reason. And so, you know, how does it affect our
Literally, we have nothing.
I mean, people are working on like Brookhaven National Lab now has a device that simulates galactic cosmic radiation, and so they're doing experiments on rodents, but like they're not able to do like all the different kinds of galactic cosmic radiation at the same time as doing like the, you know, kind of radiation that you'd get from our sun. And it's just like, it's a complicated picture. And then you've got low gravity, and we also think that fluid shifts impact your vision, and maybe all of this stuff impacts cognition, and how can we have babies in space safely? Who knows? And then we also don't know how to, like, growing food in space is going to be tough. We've done some stuff on the International Space Station, but like on Mars, for example, the regolith on the surface, which is like super jagged, and you're going to have to worry about like making sure you don't breathe it in because it might scratch your lungs and scar them over time. But it also has perchlorates in it. And this is a chemical that messes with the hormones that your thyroid makes. And if you're a fetus, that's going to mess with the way your nervous system develops. But if you're an adult, then it's going to mess with things like your heart rate and your blood pressure. And we know that if you grow plants in dirt that has perchlorates, the plants essentially suck up the perchlorates. So if you're going to use that dirt for your garden, you're going to have to clean out the perchlorates first. Or if you're going to like take water from Mars, that water probably has some perchlorates in it, because everyone that I talked to said, well, you can just rinse the dirt to get the perchlorates out. Well, that probably means that all the water on Mars has like sucked up some of the perchlorates over time. So you're going to have to make sure you're removing these toxic chemicals. And then you're going to have to figure out how to make like closed loop ecosystems, because it's going to be really expensive to bring mass from Earth to Mars. So you're going to want to recycle as much as you can. And so these closed loop ecosystems are meant to recycle as much as you can, you know, use the plant waste as fertilizer, use the human waste as fertilizer, get the plants to provide oxygen and suck out carbon dioxide. You know, we had Biosphere 2, which was an experiment that tried to do this. It didn't go great. They lost between 10 to 16% of their body mass. So they weren't, because they couldn't grow enough food. They had to pipe in oxygen. This was not necessarily a fault of the plants, but their facility was sort of like sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, which meant the plants couldn't turn the carbon dioxide into oxygen because it wasn't available anymore. And then they split into two hateful factions and started spitting on each other. So lots of things didn't go well. Yeah, like psychology wasn't going well. Food wasn't going well. Oxygen generation wasn't going well. We have a lot to learn. So just lots of things we still need to learn.
That's great. One final question.
Okay.
What are you excited about, either on your field, like new discoveries, or things that are being worked in your field?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about, like, you know, the upcoming Artemis missions. I know they got pushed back. Still excited about them. In my field, I'm part of the American Society of Parasitologists. I'm just excited about the people who are continuing to go out there and find new parasites and describe them. I know taxonomy is like, you know, just going out and describing and finding new species. A lot of people don't find that super exciting. I think it's fascinating. There's so much cool stuff out there we haven't found yet. And so I'm excited about taxonomy. This is important stuff. There's so much we have left to find.
Yeah, one thing about taxonomy that is exciting. I was watching The Mentor the other day, National Geographic, and these people go inside these really weird, scary caves that it feels like you're going inside the core of the earth, and you can see nothing at all. And they find weird insects down there, and lizards and stuff that some of them doesn't even have eyes. So I also write science fiction novels, and it is so easy to find monsters for my stories. You just watch people doing science, so it's kind of fun for me. But yeah, it's crazy. That's a pretty exciting thing. Like, it's scary when you see the documentaries. Like, these people are crazy. The scientists are a little crazy. because they get into really scary places just to find science and new. And that's the thing. We've been here at least, like science is kind of new. I feel like science is kind of new, like discovery. You could talk about, like Greeks 2,000 years ago describing stuff. Most of them were wrong, but they start describing this. And maybe, you can say that, well, science starts there, and technology, when we have the first thing that we could write something, a pencil. Wow, that's really cool technology, even though it doesn't look like technology, but it is technology. So maybe we have 2000 and maybe good modern science around 100 years, 150 years, even though we have a Newton, 200 and something, 300 years ago, but still he was describing stuff that he didn't understand. But finding this type of science is exciting to me, that wow, we still don't know like probably half of the species that exist in the whole planet. And
Yeah.
we know a lot. So that's a really exciting place to be. I don't know. To me, it's really exciting to be in this time and era of discoveries. And like that, you were just in a regular day, and a friend that was on vacations just came back and say, "Hey, Kelly, I find this weird thing. I don't know what it is." And oh, there you go. You have a new species. It is really exciting for me. I don't know if that doesn't excite you, but wow. And I mean, the people that is listening to us, to me, that's mind blowing. So yeah, I'm happy
I
about
agree.
it.
Yep, I love it.
All right,
It's a good
Kelly.
time to be alive
It is a good time to be alive.
for
Kelly
science.
Weinersmith. Kelly, can you tell us where we can find you, how we can find your books, and of course, go and listen to Daniel and Kelly, Extraordinary Universe. But Kelly, tell us where they can find you and send you some love.
My website is Weinersmith.com, and Daniel and Kelly's Extraordinary Universe is my podcast, and that is the best place to find me, really, to find me and Daniel geeking out. And thank you so much for having me on the show. You ask great questions, and it's so much fun geeking out with you. I had a lot of fun.
It's cute. I will put all of those in the description too, so you guys can check it out. Thank you one more time, and like always, find a way. It's that I always say it in Spanish, like busca la manera de aprender que más te divierta. Like, the way that is more fun for you to learn new stuff. So that's what it is. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Y para ustedes, esto es curiosidad científica.